And good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma, and I do appreciate you being with me on this Wednesday morning. I want to get right back into Isaiah chapter 34. Now, we're focused on the Olivet Discourse. We've been looking at Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, the closing pericope of the Olivet Discourse, demonstrating that the language that is used there, the language that is used in Matthew 24, 29 and following, is typical Hebraic apocalyptic language. I've shared with you on Monday of this week how important it is, how critical it is to understand the nature of Hebraic apocalyptic language. Now, some people find that hard to believe. Some people like to basically scoff and ridicule and say, in fact, I had a guy one time right here in Ardmore. He was a preacher. And I was talking about the Hebraic roots of the New Testament eschatology, the Hebraic nature of biblical eschatology, and how important it is to understand the New Testament and the Bible as a whole within the context of the Hebraic culture. And he said, well, that's nonsense. He said, if I can't pick up the Bible, and we were talking specifically about 1 Corinthians 15. And he said, if I cannot pick up the Bible and if I cannot read 1 Corinthians 15 just exactly like I would pick up the newspaper and understand it, then I don't want anything to do with it. And I said, well, brother, there's one problem with it. The newspaper is written at the time, it was 20th century America. The Bible was written to Hebrews 2,000 years ago, with a Hebraic culture, a Hebraic mindset. And he literally just scoffed at it. He said, well, I don't even want to talk to you anymore. I said, well, okay, that's fine. But that's not much of a way to answer the reality of things. So anyway, I've been sharing with you some of the Old Testament prophetic background for this kind of language. And I've looked at Isaiah chapter 34. Isaiah chapter 34 is a prediction of the destruction of, quote, heaven and earth. The constellations of the heavens shall be melted. The mountains shall be melted with the blood of the enemies of God. And the Lord said, his sword shall be bathed in heaven. But then he says, this is the day of wrath against Edom and against Bozrah. Now, I ask the question, I hope you'll consider it. If Isaiah 34 is to be taken literally in regard to the constellations melting, the earth being destroyed, etc., at this proposed end of time, what sin will Edom and Bozrah have committed that is so egregious that this destruction of the cosmos is brought about by their sin? It's kind of like Isaiah chapter 24 that we've already looked at. The destruction of the heaven and earth in that text would be caused by the fact that they, whoever they is, had violated the everlasting covenant. And the parallel passage to it, Hosea chapter 8, verse 1 and 2, shows that it was Israel that had violated Torah. So we have two examples here. Two examples of the destruction of heaven and earth, so-called, as a result, number one, of the sin of Israel for violating Torah. Number two, some sin of Edom and the capital city of Bozrah. And as a result of that sin, this destruction of the cosmos would take place. So once again, now in Isaiah chapter 24, we know what the sin was: violating Torah, transgressing the law. So what's the sin in Isaiah chapter 34 that Edom and Bozrah will one day commit that will bring about the destruction of the entire created order? By the way, just as a little side note here, the kingdom of Edom ceased to exist as a kingdom. You know, the geography's still there. The kingdom of Edom that was in existence at the time of the writing of Isaiah 34, at the time of the writing of Jeremiah, at the time of the writing of Obadiah, at the time of the writing of Ezekiel. That kingdom no longer exists. So you got to ask yourself the question, is Edom, that kingdom that existed back then, you know, in the 6th century BC, is that kingdom going to be restored and commit other sins so egregious that it will cause heaven and earth to be destroyed? Now listen, these are serious and legitimate exegetical questions. But let's continue, shall we? Do not forget that in Isaiah chapter 34, and I tell you what, I'm going to have to get me some more glasses that are better up close, because this is too close that I'm having to read this. But nonetheless, the Lord said in Isaiah chapter 34, verse 5 again, I've already read it, but let me read it again. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Indeed, it shall come down on Edom and on the people of my curse for judgment. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood. It is made overflowing with fatness, with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For, see, God's sword is going to bring about destruction. For, here's the cause, here's the reason. For the Lord has a sacrifice in Bozrah and a great slaughter in the land of Edom. Now, I want you to notice something here. This is incredible. I've told you that Hebrew apocalyptic language was never intended to be taken literally. And when we do take it literally, we run into insurmountable problems. I'm going to begin reading verse 8. For it is what? The destruction of Edom. It is the day of the Lord's vengeance, the year of recompense for the cause of Zion. That is Edom's, its streams shall be turned into pitch, and its dust into brimstone. Its land shall become burning pitch. It shall not be quenched day or night. Its smoke shall ascend forever. From generation to generation it shall lie waste. No one shall pass through it forever and forever. Well, we got some amazing comments here. Number one, this destruction of Edom was going to be called the day of the Lord, the day of the Lord's vengeance, the year of recompense. Now look, ladies and gentlemen, you would do yourself an incredible favor, an incredible service, if you just go to the Old Testament and you find a really good Bible study program, whether that's Logos, which is expensive, or go to Bible Gateway, which is free, okay? And in the search bar, type in year of recompense or time of recompense. Type in visitation, time of visitation, day of wrath, day of the Lord. Look, just do yourself a favor and look up all of those terms, and what you're going to find is they are invariably used of any time in history in which Yahweh intervened in history to use one nation to judge another. This terminology is never used of the end of time, some proposed end of time. It is when some nation, even though Yahweh may well have used them to accomplish his purposes, all right? They may have been the rod of his anger and the staff of his wrath. Isaiah 10, 5-7, to speak of the Assyrians, as he used the Assyrians to destroy the 10 northern tribes, okay? But then he would bring judgment on them. The point being that this language of the day of the Lord simply does not refer to any end of time. Now, I told you last week, my book, The Elements Shall Melt with Fervent Heat, I document this extensively. with greater detail and greater discussion than I'm able to share with you here on Morning Musings. But for the time being, just notice, this is God promising judgment on Edom because of Edom's sin, whatever that sin was, but it's God paying them back for their sin. And notice that this judgment, its streams shall be turned into pitch, the dust into brimstone, its land shall become burning pitch, it shall not be quenched night or day, its smoke shall ascend forever and forever, from generation to generation, it shall lie waste. No one will pass through it forever and ever. And somebody says, well, see, that hasn't happened yet. Well, as we will see tomorrow or Monday, depending on how long-winded I get, this has been fulfilled. And the rejoinder is, no, the dust would be turned to pitch, the streams would be turned to pitch, and it would burn day and night forever and forever. And that land of Edom is still there. Well, God never said he would destroy the dirt of Edom. He said he would destroy the kingdom under the imagery of destroying heaven and earth to be sure. But, and there's the kicker, in what we shall see, and as I have asked you, please read the entire chapter. Read verses 11 and following and pay real close attention. When God said, the dust shall burn, the streams shall burn forever and forever, and the smoke shall ascend forever and ever, it just simply means that that kingdom was going to fall and never rise again. Now, as I have promised you, I'm going to show you from Scripture that this promise was fulfilled, but I don't have any time left for today. I'm going to do my best to get to it tomorrow and Thursday, but if not Thursday, then next week, all right? In the meantime, please go to my website, DonKPreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, order the book, The Elements Shall Melt with Fervent Heat, send me a note that says you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping, and that will save you $5. Now, what do we see here? In Isaiah 34, we have the destruction of heaven and earth, the cosmos, the constellations of the cosmos being burned or melting, the earth melting, totally dissolved, but it would be as a result of the sin of Edom and the sin of Bozrah. So, unless you're willing to say, and to provide some proof of it, unless you're willing to say that Edom and Bozrah will one day be restored, because you see, they don't exist as a kingdom today. They certainly do not exist today as a kingdom, as the kingdom that existed in the time of Isaiah. They just don't exist. But unless you're willing to argue that they will be, then the prophecy is fulfilled, meaning that the language of the destruction of heaven and earth, of the day of the Lord, you know, the day of the Lord in Matthew chapter 25:31, is also fulfilled. So, I will see you on the flip side.